What's up, you guys? We're back with part 2, taking a look at average sale price. Again, this is our analysis of average sale price of watches. We want to clear up all
actual transacted.
Correct. Actual transacted sale prices.
No watch charted, no
aggregators.
No aggregators.
This is real cold hard statistics that we compiled with Adrian. And we're going to be taking a look at, in this video, probably 2 of the most popular watches, 2 of our best-selling watch brands, I would say, in Rolex and Richard Mille. So let's go. Starting with what I feel is probably going to be maybe the most collectible modern Submariner reference. The Rolex Submariner Hulk 116610LV. Early 2016, selling $7,000, roughly speaking, average market sale.
Again, back in the day, you can walk into your Rolex AD and they had showcases full of Hulks. That's just what it was back then. There really wasn't any type of hype behind them, and then the watch market happened.
All right, so we see around the $7,000 price point, then a pretty significant increase, almost 12%, a little over 12%, to about, roughly speaking, again, this is average sale price, around the $8,000 price point. And from there, really exploded, right? So Hulk was discontinued in 2020, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
We see a 25% increase in price from about the $8,000 average sale price to the $11,000 sale price, right? That's a huge jump right there. And then 2019, we see another 25% increase in terms of average sale price to the $15,000 price point. Now, if I can ask you, because 2020 happens, what made the Hulk so popular?
So the Hulk, I remember around the 2017 or 2018 mark, there was news that it was going to become discontinued. The Rolex Hulk around that 2017, 2018, I don't recall the year, there was a huge spike in buying and volume of purchasing from the gray market on the premise that it was going to become discontinued. Now, if you remember, 2016, 2017, 2018 was right around the time social media really exploded. Also, the time where I would say Facebook groups really became a very transparent source of information for the retail public and the gray market public as well. So there was a rumor, again, that the Hulk was going to be discontinued, which is what immediately drove the price up.
We hear those speculation, those rumors. We see basically back-to-back 25% annual increases in terms of average sale price, right around that $15,000 to $16,000. Actually, $16,000 was the average sale price. And then we see 2021, 2022, $10,000 increase. Average sale price goes from about $16,000 to almost $26,000. And then at the peak was trading upwards of $30,000, right?
Yeah, I mean the Hulk I think separates and differentiates itself from anything else that Rolex really is known for. It's so different because of the green, right?
Yeah.
Previous to the Hulk, they had the 1166 or 16610V, which was the was the Kermit. But again, that was a black dial.
Yep.
Right. This is such a vibrant.
And that was a 50th anniversary. For
50th anniversary. Yeah. So the Hulk was such a vibrant, bold green color that we haven't really seen from Rolex before. It was still relatively affordable. It was much different than anything else Rolex had in its offering. Therefore, became, besides the Daytona, probably the most popular stainless steel Rolex watch.
Yeah, so we saw $25,000 price point, and then average sale price this year, 2022, actually increased about $26,000. Now, market today, I would say, is probably in the lower 20s,
yeah.
Right? We're talking about $22,000 to $24,000, again, pending condition.
We're talking about a new card example, because there is a big price differentiation for collectors of the new green card warranty card system Hulk, right? Because it is rare by even Rolex standards. It's rare because it is such a short production green card Rolex Hulks on the broad market. So that collectability makes the price where it was. I mean, $32,000 is the highest we sold one for personally, but I've known of examples that are sold for $35,000 with a new card warranty system.
Now let me ask you, right? We understand that maybe for example, the color was something a little unique. I mean, the Kermit was arguably more special. Why? Because the 50th anniversary Submariner. Second, it's actually the first steel Submariner with a green bezel or a colored bezel in steel, right? Obviously they had the bluesy and what have you, but Kermit was the first in steel. But yet the Hulk far surpassed the Kermit.
Far
right?
surpassed, yeah.
I think it has to do.
Well, minus flat 4 example.
Yeah, minus the, right, exactly. Minus the very special, like super limited, you know, whatever, what have you, right? Obviously, that's kind of a beast of its own. It's a market of its own. But I think it has to do probably also with the build construction, right? It seems that modern pieces will just outdo kind of neo-vintage or vintage models, even if the production is much higher. I guess it has to do maybe with the build quality, maybe with the way that the watch looks. Well,
they changed the pin system, which is very important. With the, you know, if you look at your average Kermit, a 16610V that has some wear in it, you're going to see a lot of stretch in the band. There's going to the links are hollow. You're going to see a lot more play, which there's a whole market for that to begin with, right? A lot of people actually like that.
Next, probably what I feel is going to be the most iconic steel modern.
It still is. I mean, look, a Rolex Daytona is the most important watch.
116500 LN, the Panda.
When they discontinued the 116520 stainless steel Daytona and they brought forward the ceramic bezel, the trend used to be, if I recall, the 116520 black dial traded for a little bit more than the white dial. But with the ceramic bezel version, the white dial just pops more, right? For a lot of people, the all black Daytona, although obviously a huge winner, wasn't as popular as the Panda Daytona. Yeah. It probably is the most aesthetically pleasing stainless steel watch that Rolex makes.
Even back in the day, the 116520 black dial was still a waitlisted piece, right? You could get it at retail, but you would have to wait a couple of months, right? Yeah. 3 months, maybe 6 months.
I was getting at the time, right around the turn of the Panda Daytona, we were buying black and white 116520s for basically, MSRP was pretty much the market. $12,000 was like the market price for a brand new example.
Which 2016 would have been right when the 116500 LN was released, trading right around the list, right? 15,000, maybe a little bit
more over list,
little more over list, right? Then we see almost a 10% increase in 2017, around that 16.5 to 17,000 price point, average sale price about the 16.5 range. Then we see another 13% jump 2018 to 19,000, then kind of remains stable, right? Stays around that $20,000 price point, even in 2020. I mean, 2020 we did see another 10% increase, same in 2019 to the 20,000 plus price point, then went to the $24,000 price point. But again, it wasn't the huge jumps that we see today, right? Today, I mean, we're talking average market price 35,000, but 2021, 2022 reached a peak of almost 60,000.
Yeah, I saw one sell for 55,000. I think the highest we sold one for was 54,000. The buyer for Rolex typically tends to be slightly lower than the buyer of Patek Philippe or that of Audemars Piguet. It is a more attainable watch. It is a household name, right? There are more wrists fitted for Rolex, hence they produce 1 million units a year and are still able to crush it and sell most of their watches in their catalog over MSRP. The Panda Daytona being at the forefront. People were having a hard time because if you see between 2016 to 2019, there wasn't such a big spike in pricing because people were still hesitant to pay those type of, over $20,000 for a stainless steel current model Rolex.
We're talking almost probably 20% over list.
It was just unheard of. It was just unheard of. And a lot of times with a watch like a Panda versus something like a 5711, you're not going to see prices jump as high because of just the overall supply. You got to be competitive with the market. You can't ask, if the market on a Daytona is $20,000, you can't ask $22,000 even. Right? You can't be 10% over market.
Yeah, it won't sell, right? It is very, very competitive price-wise. Absolutely no doubt. So we're talking a watch that started 2016 average sale price. Again, this is average sale price based on what we've done as a company in Luxury Bazaar, around the 15,000. Spiked all the way to 55,000. We sold one 54,000. Then average sale price in 2022 settled around that 35. And I'd say market has kind of stayed around that $30,000 to $33,000 price range. That's really where the Daytona has lived for the last 3 months.
The buyer who's been waiting to buy the Panda Daytona, as I mentioned before, normally doesn't have as much money as the Patek buyer. So in their mind, they're going to wait. Okay,
so obviously current market, we said 30 to 33,000. This was another fantastic gainer, right? Again, we're talking about dip in the market. It's settled around that $30,000 range. Now, average annual returner, we're still talking almost 13% over the last 6 years, right? Or 7 years rather. That's a huge amount for a watch that was one of the hypest watches that went excessively high in price, came down a tremendous amount, right, from that high, almost $20,000, more than $20,000 basically, and yet still realized a return that outperformed the S&P 500 from a brand that produces 1 million watches.
Yeah, that's why even if you see Rolex annual return over time isn't as big as AP or Patek, the fact that they're able to produce so much more of their product and yet hold returns like that, to me, is more impressive.
Right, it is.
More impressive.
It's absolutely more impressive, and it speaks to, in my opinion, the king status of Rolex in the watch market, right?
It's by far.
I mean, it's just not even close, right?
Not even close.
To produce literally over 10 times that of Patek Philippe, over 20 times that of AP, I mean, and yet have similar kind of returns, that's insane. Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's move on to what I feel is kind of a changing in the guard, right? We talked about steel Daytonas as really the Mac Daddy Daytonas, right? 116508, what's now known as the John Mayer.
So this one,
unquestionably the John Mayer.
Unquestionably the John Mayer. This one was very interesting because at the time it was released, it was served to be a sports watch. It is probably, again, the most iconic sporty watch. So a Daytona in any precious metal variant, really, there was no hype. Nobody really wanted it. It wasn't a thing. Nobody really wanted them. They were traded for significantly under retail. It was $34,000 retail at the time. I could pick up the phone, call my guy, get one, and sell it for $22,000. Nobody cared about a yellow gold John Mayer Daytona.
It was average sale price for us, 2016, around that $23,000 price point. 2017, $23,000. 2018 hits, probably right around the same time, I would assume. I don't know.
The 𝗕𝗏𝗄𝗧 article with John Mayer?
Yes, the 𝗕𝗏𝗄𝗧 video, Talking Watches Part 2 with John Mayer. He sits down with Ben Clymer and says the white gold blue dial, but more specifically the yellow gold green dial, Daytonas are really special. And what happens?
Boom.
Overnight success, right? We go from an average sale price of about $23,000 to now almost $30,000, a massive increase, 20% increase basically in a single year. For Rolex specifically, again, this is Rolex. Precious metal Daytonas was the absolute dog. Nobody cared for them for years on end. Overnight success, 20%. 2019 hits, doubles in price, almost 44,000 average sale price, 35% increase in the average sale price. And then we go to 2020. Again, COVID hits, remained stable. Actually went up in price. Average sale price for us in 2020 versus 2019 was from 43.5 to 45.5. So again, increase in price, and now 2021 hits, 2022 hits, peak social media, peak watch market craze, goes from an average sale price of $72,000 in 2021 to well over $110,000 now, really at the peak of the market, right? So again, 40% and 50% increase in average sale price respectively in 2021 and 2022.
Yeah, 2021 actually, I recall, similar to the Hulk effect, I like to call it, because it happened with the Hulk first, was the John Mayer effect, where there was rumored information that they were going to discontinue it. So a lot of people were holding off for dear life at the beginning of 2021. Again, right around Basel, prices hiking to $80,000, and then right after that, people realized that it was not going to be discontinued, and then a lot of people lost their pants. But 2021 hit, right? If 2021, when Basel came out, that was in the beginning of 2021. Mm-hmm. And then this is when we really started to feel the effects of stimulus, like really bad. And then we saw prices go to just absolutely incredible. Sometimes I sold a few pieces and I was like, I can't believe this. I cannot believe that this guy's willing to pay this much for a John Mayer. But
so highest we ever sold, or you ever sold one? Do you remember? I think it was about 140,000. 140,000. Now this is a watch
that was January 2022, which for me was the peak of the market as a whole. Period.
Right.
January 2022.
And again, we're talking about, this was January 2022, you sell one for 140,000. This was a watch in 2016, literally 6 years ago. You wouldn't stock for 20,000, and yet you sold for 7x what you wouldn't stock it for. An absolutely insane climb. Again, a watch like this, I think, is a little bit of an outlier, right? And it's important to showcase it. Why? Because I like to use the extreme examples just to show, like, listen, we've shown Hulks, we've shown Panda Daytonas. those will always perform well. They will always perform well in my opinion, right? But there will be these ones, these superstars, right?
Yeah, in a precious metal,
correct.
Especially
in precious metal, that will just take the world by storm. And there's no other way to explain it other than the John Mayer factor. That's literally that's the only way I can possibly explain it.
So right? I think we have here the highest average return over 7 years that we've seen.
Yeah.
That goes to the 116508 John Mayer Daytona.
25% average annual return. Again, a watch that we started with average sale price in 2016, right around the 23,000. Average sale price in 2022, 110,000. So absolutely insane, really a meteoric rise.
Meteoric, yeah.
So let's go to something a little bit more stable that Rolex produced for a long time, almost 16 years if I'm not mistaken, 116520 black, right?
Yep.
We talked about the popularity of the Daytona, obviously the black being a little bit more collectible than the white, but since we did the Panda, I'd like to do the black. I love this analysis because again, this was a watch that they produced for a long time, like long stretches of period. Even vintage GMTs, 5513 Submariner was produced for almost 20, maybe even 20 plus years, right? So there's long stretches in their history where they'll produce a reference for a very long time, and yet it'll still perform very well. This is a perfect prime example. So 116520 black, average sale price 2016, 11.5, right? Right around that 11.5. Now this would have been a watch I would assume retailed for around the 13.
It was 12,000. It was 12,000 and change.
There you go. So 12,000 and change.
The Panda's a little bit more ceramic bezel, but it was around 12,000 and change.
So right under retail price, right? And again, this was one, if I'm not mistaken, I still remember it being a little waitlisted, right? You can get it, but you had to wait like just a little bit. They would order for you and what have you.
It was at the time. It was still from a volume perspective, from an overall demand perspective. It was the most traded watch in the market. 116520. It's what we sold the most of. I mean.
So then you go to 2017, slight increase from 11.5 to about average sale price of about 12,000, and then you see a huge spike up to $15,000. Now this was back in 2018, which is a little bit surprising to me because that would mean that this was discontinued now for about 2 years.
Yeah, well, I mean, listen, some people who prefer the stainless steel bezel, the ceramic bezel. I mean, the 116520 from 2016 on pretty much trailed behind the ceramic Daytona. So whatever pool came from the ceramic Daytona went into the 116520s.
Yeah, rising tide raises all ships kind of thing, right? So you get 15,000, kind of stayed around there in 2019. Actually, in 2020 was actually a great gainer. So it went from about the 16,000 average sale price to almost 19,000, 15% gain. And then again, 2021 hits, you see about 25,000. And then not a huge increase, but still, it remained pretty stable at the 26,000 average sale price in 2022. Current market, 116520 black, excellent condition, full set, around the low 20s if I had to guess.
I think so. I think today that's pretty much at the max what you're going to be able to sell for, like a green card, V serial maybe, or something even scrambled. That's in a great condition. That's where you're going to be. Because if you remember, 116520, there's so many iterations of it, from what kind of papers it has, what kind of this it has. There's a lot of nuances in between. So again,
buckle even, right?
Buckle. So just to remind everybody, we are taking data points from as new, if not as new as possible examples.
Still had an average annual return of 12% per year over the last 6 years, right? Again, outperforming the S&P 500. Again, I can't stress this enough. The point isn't so much to say, look, watches are a great investment. It's just to show you, like, listen, over time, yeah, sure, on any given year, any asset is subject to price fluctuation. But these are steady, consistent gainers pretty much across.
So when I actually first got into the watch business in 2011, talking about watches investments was just way off the table. Nobody thought about that. That just wasn't even in the cards. Your money is safe in Rolex. Rolex holds value. The idea before the cash grab scenarios, before it became a commodity, before it was traded like it is today, before people were making money walking out of their AD, the idea of buying a Rolex was, I'm going to buy this watch for X amount of money, I'm going to retain 20% of my, I'm going to lose maybe 20%, maybe 30%. That was the idea. That's why Rolex was so popular, because it was a luxury item that somebody was going to buy and hold as much value, retain as much value as possible. That's what Rolex was, and then we've seen that far surpassed at this point.
So I think one watch that certainly was always a great store of value and has always been super collectible is a Pepsi, right?
Yeah.
Rolex Pepsi, right? We're going to focus on the modern reference, 126710 BLRO. This was released, I believe, 2017, 2018, maybe in a ceramic bezel. Again, they had kind of trouble making that.
With the Jubilee. These are Jubilee examples.
Right. These will be, we're talking Jubilee, right? Because Oyster is too new. It still trades a little bit more premium. There's not as much supply out there. So average price, we're talking approximately 2018 average sale price around the $16,000 price point. So right out the gate, trading at, I mean, 1.5 times list basically, right? Because this is a $10,000 retail watch selling at about $16,000 price point. Again, this is average sale price. And then we just see consistent increase in price over time. Average sale price 2019, the 17,000 range. COVID hits 2020, stays right around the 17,000 range. Average sale price again, 2021, 2022, huge spike. 21.3, 26.5 average sale price. We're talking about basically 20% in both years, over 20%. And then market price today, again, brand new example.
Around 19,000.
Yeah, around 19,000. That's kind of fair market value if I had to estimate. Brand new, kind of fresh example. So again, another watch, average annual return, we're talking about the 12%, right? We've talked about, I would say, the hypest Rolex models, right? The absolute hype. The only one we haven't mentioned really is the Platinum Daytona.
Right.
And your meteorite pieces, right?
Meteorite pieces.
Let me ask you something, right? We've focused on the hype. Let's go to something like a Datejust, right? Again, we haven't done like concrete, kind of statistics on it, but based on your market knowledge, right? Back in 2016, this was a watch I'd assume was trading well below, like 35, 50 off, close to.
Well, not 50 off, but the general rule of thumb, two-tone Datejust especially, there was always, I had one supplier that I was consistently buying them from, it was 25% off of retail.
Right.
And that's just what it was, they basically started trading over retail just because there was nothing in the stores.
Yeah, there was no supply.
There was no supply.
People were forced to buy a Datejust to get everything else.
Right, so therefore that's where, prices, we're talking Wimbledon dials, were really the outlier here where they brought like a significant premium. But they absolutely exceeded expectations because they just were never really overly popular. People always wanted the Submariners, they always wanted the Daytonas, they always wanted the GMTs, and then they just came into the picture. What actually surprised me the most in the whole entire Rolex line was the Oyster Flex Daytona. Rolex has always been a bracelet watch. It is synonymous with having a bracelet, right? Dating back to the Paul Newman days, even till today. Rolex on strap has always been a dog, we like to call it. Nobody cared for the leather
Zenith Daytonas, oh my God, on the strap,
horrible.
Forget, yeah.
Just unsellable. Then they came out with the Oyster Flex. Oyster Flex provided obviously a comfort, rubber strap, which made it a sporty feel with the precious metal, and it absolutely took off. That was probably the biggest surprise for me because that was so out of Rolex ordinary, a Rolex on a strap.
Again, the point of bringing up the Datejust was this was a 25 off list, and at one point Datejust were consistently trading above retail, right? Literally at the peak of the market, you could buy a Wimbledon probably 15-20% over list, right? You would think that they would never experience the kind of returns that they're showing based on our analysis, right?
Anytime you have something, especially precious metal, because it tends to be expensive out the gate, that climbs to such price hikes is always dangerous because, when it falls hard. If a Daytona falls, if it's stainless steel Daytona falls, we're talking, in the $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 at the most. But, when you have a Platinum Daytona that was with a diamond dial 220 and is now 120, that's a serious hit.
Let's go to something that doesn't have as much supply. Probably one of your favorite brands, which is the one,
Richard
the only Richard Mille.
This is the Uber of the watch industry.
Uber luxury.
Because if I was a young collector or a young guy in the business in 2001 when Richard Mille really started, and they proposed this idea to me, it was kind of like when I first heard of Uber. This will never work.
You're the king of Richard Mille. This is your wheelhouse. When it comes to sales at Luxury Bazaar, Adrian is the man. Let's start with the RM10, kind of a base model, right?
These were watches that when I first came into Luxury Bazaar, we were buying them in packages cheap.
Yeah.
Talking highly discounted off of retail. So to see in such a short time frame where this brand has gone is nothing short of incredible. There weren't AP closeouts. There weren't Patek closeouts, and there were never Rolex closeouts. The three brands that we already mentioned. It was not that long ago that Richard Mille was a closeout brand.
Listen, again, this is a watch that has now turned over in 2021, over $1 billion in sales.
It's nothing short of incredible, especially considering that they produce under 5,000 units a year. That's just mind-boggling.
Yeah.
But they're avant-garde. They've captured the attention of the newcomer. and it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
But anyway, going back to the numbers.
RM10 market price, again,
Yeah.
this is average sale price that we've done. We're talking about roughly the $50,000 range. Now, RM10 retail price, you know approximately?
I actually can probably pull it up. I believe an RM10 maybe retailed around the $60,000 range,
In any case, right?
$65,000
We'll put
range,
up
under 100,000.
Right, under 100,000, but trading, you know, again, at a discount from retail, at a discount, certain discount from retail. Again, 2016, this would have been, you know, I guess the start of the watch market boom, if you will, to a certain extent. 2017 hits, we see a 15% increase in Richard Mille, or at least the RM10, up to the $58,000 price point. Again, another almost 15% increase to the $68,000 price point. Not that much growth from there on in the 2019 to 2020 kind of phase, both averaging about 10% increases rather. But again, I think this was a time, and correct me if I'm wrong, right? When you had a watch that was in 2016 trading under list to now 2020 trading over list.
Yeah, well,
right?
it is discontinued, but yes.
Right, it was discontinued. But I feel like the sentiment, or at least from what I remember, was, holy shit, is this watch really trading over list?
Yep.
Why?
Yep.
And then that kind of put, again, correct me if I'm wrong, this fear in collectors, like, should I really be buying this over list? And that's kind of why I see, and you see this a lot in the models here, where like the prices stabilize around that 2019, 2020 range. Am I correct in saying that?
That's a very fair assumption. And the reason, and I want to just kind of preface this by saying, the reason that we use these data points, these 6-year data points, because prior to 2016, there wasn't that much of a change in pricing.
Right.
Everything was stable.
Yeah.
What you're seeing between these 6 years is really the peak of social media. The real peak of when we started heavily using social media, actually nowhere close to the levels that we do here at Luxury Bazaar today. But I mean just having an Instagram, meeting people, exposing RMs, and seeing the popularity of the brand over time. The reason for the spike in this product was because the world became smaller.
So we go into 2020, again, kind of a stable market. Yes, there is still increasing by a factor of about 10% per year, but then you see 2021 hits, and again, boom, right? 40% increase, going from an average sale price in 2020 of $80,000 to 2021, $135,000 almost, right? That's a huge increase. Then 2022 hits around that $140,000. So again, a 5% increase in our average sale price.
I think it's very important for those listening to understand that Richard Mille, because it is a new brand, you have to tie a lot of its customers to young guys that made a lot of money, and they made a lot of money fast, whether it be in tech, whether it be in entertainment, but mostly in crypto. As crypto climbs, so does RM, because the guy that just made the fast buck wants to put it right into RM. So we actually saw decline in the market on RM start to happen directly parallel to Bitcoin at 69,000 falling. The peak RM market was a year ago today.
We still saw an increase in average sale price despite this.
Despite that, but this is especially and particularly has ties with cryptocurrency because of the actual consumer.
So RM10 market price today, again, this is a titanium model. If you were to buy it, you know, excellent condition, basically the peak that you could, what would it be?
Right around 140 to 150,
right.
pending condition, pending year, and service history, not service history, but let's say around 150,000.
Right. Listen, it's starting to experience maybe a little bit more price turbulence on those models that have been produced for a very long time.
Right.
That you even said, you know, I hope they discontinue them. They've been produced for too long now at this point. But overall, right, Richard Mille market compared to brands like AP, Patek Philippe, has really held very well, which is surprising. We go back to that Daytona analogy. A watch that goes up in price a lot is going to fall hard. People probably expected that for Richard Mille, and it was just not there to the same degree most expected. This
is the perfect supply-demand formula here.
Yep.
When you have watches, again, going back to them making 5,000 units a year, there's so many Rolexes on the market, there's not a lot of Richard Milles on the market. So that's really what it boils down to.
Yeah. RM55 white, right? This is Bubba Watson, right? If I'm not mistaken, correct me.
RM55 Bubba Watson, yeah.
This absolutely, without a doubt, one of the nicest looking aesthetically RMs on the market.
It's a familiar metal, it's a familiar case look. But once you start getting into colored ceramics, like a white ceramic, for the average watch enthusiast, it's so confusing to them.
Yeah.
You know, and RM55, they used to call it the G-Shock. It was a piece of art. It was so confusing. It was
Jackson Pollock.
Like I mentioned,
it was a Jackson. It was exactly that, right? Okay, so average sale price of RM55 white, again, going back to 2016. Roughly speaking, about the $80,000.
Yeah, I remember when I sold one, a brand new example of 2016 papers for $78,000. I thought I was the greatest watch salesman of all time. I will never forget that day. I couldn't believe that the guy paid that money.
How times have changed.
How times have changed.
We go to 2017. Again, nice little increase, about the 8 to 10% range, 88,000 average sale price. And then 2018, we see a huge spike, right? All the way up to 130,000. We're talking about over a 30% increase in price. Now, again, I wasn't privy to the market at the time.
Just more exposure to the brand. 2018 for me personally, when I was a salesman here, and for the company as a whole, was the #1 volume Richard Mille year. 2018 was that year. Asian market really started to invest their money into this stuff, and I had actually mentioned in the Richard Mille video where countries like Japan, like Malaysia or Indonesia that had violently volatile currencies decided to use that as a hedge, and it just became extremely popular in Japan, in Asia.
So 2018 hits, best sales kind of performer for Richard, or best sales performance for Richard Mille, and then you go to 2019. Again, going back to this idea, watch prices of Richard Mille explodes. Do people really buy into it? Not really, right? Kind of stayed stable, went up about 5% from about the 130 range to the 135 range, and then again, 2020 hits.
Yep.
Now you'd expect it. Pandemic, all other watches are going down in price. You'd expect it to crater. What ends up happening? Explodes. 135 to 170. 20%, almost a 21% sharp increase. And then the following year follows up the 20% increase to nearly doubling the price, right? Almost a 50% return basically from 170
you're gonna
to 325
see
average sale
amongst
price.
a lot of these RM brands that we're going to talk about that early 2021 pull to end of 2021 pull is crypto, and RM was the closest product that was tied to crypto.
Yep.
Was Richard Mille.
It is kind of the cryptocurrency of the watch industry.
Absolutely.
To a certain extent, right? Trades very much. You see a Rolex kind of trading like the S&P, and you see very much Richard Mille trading very much like exactly that, like the crypto, at least the Bitcoin market, let's say. And then 2022 kind of remains stable, if you will, right? 5% increase in average sale price to about the 340s. Now we've seen current market kind of go back to those 2021 levels, right? Around the 320 range.
Yeah, and actually what RM did with RM55 white has been very, very smart, because I do believe it's still in production, and I have yet to see, and I can't actually recall seeing one, a pretty recent 2022 papered piece. So that means that they really kind of put them in the safe. They didn't want to flood the market too much with them. That's why you see specifically an RM55 white hold and retain value so well.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. They also made a gray Bubba Watson, a black Bubba Watson. There's a bunch of different.
They made different variations for areas. They've made it for the Americas. They made it for Asia. You have gray ones. You have black ones. You have white with baby blue inside, which is a Japan one. White with a red inside, which is also an Asia one. You had black ones. They were called literally the Americas editions. Black with white inside, black with red inside. Yeah, so they had a lot of iterations. Right. But specifically the RM55 white, because it's the one that stands out the most. It's just an all-white watch. I think this is what kind of gave birth to this white ceramic perpetual. So
now let's go to probably the cream. I would say like the standard bearer for chronographs, or Richard Mille, or at least it was for a very, very long time, and that's the RM11, right? 100%. Specifically, we focused in on the rose gold titanium just because we have a lot more data points of this one specifically.
So the RM11 rose gold titanium was pretty much the gold standard
chronograph.
Just gold standard piece of RM, period. I remember, like, when I think of Richard Mille, if you say the name Richard Mille to me, I think RM11 immediately, because when I first started, I remember seeing RM11.
Okay, average sale price RM11, again, this was kind of the standard bearer of Richard Mille, if you will, to a certain
extent. Closeout piece.
Right.
It was a closeout piece.
It was a closeout piece, right? Could be bought way under list, right? The average sale price from us would have been around the $60,000 to $63,000 range.
Retail price on the RM11 rose gold titanium at the time, at 2016, when it was $60,000 market price, was, I believe, 100 to 110.
110.
Yeah,
so we're talking
115, something
almost
like that.
Almost 50 off list.
Almost half price.
Almost 50 off list. Then we see a 20% jump 2016 to 2017 of average sale price 82,000. Huge increase. Again, 2019 hits. Pretty significant increase, 12%. Different from what we've seen before, right? I don't know why specifically, right? Because 2019 would have been the best year for Richard Mille. Any reason why maybe it didn't have the huge price surge?
Because RM11 rose gold titanium was, at the time when it was released, or sorry, not at the time when it was released, but around the 2019 is when they started to really push the boundaries of what they were producing, and RM11 rose gold titanium was a conservative piece for the Richard Mille client. This is when you started getting into the colored ceramics. This is when you started getting into the NTPTs. This is when you started to get, that's what people were kind of going after. Precious metal, precious metal rose gold wasn't really what the RM buyer wanted. They wanted as sporty and as avant-garde as possible.
So 2019 hits, again, a 12% increase in average sale price. 2020, a 20% increase in average sale price to 118,000. 2020, or sorry, that was 2019. 2020, actually we did see a pretty big jump. Sorry, that's my fault. So 2020, we see another huge jump, 25% average sale price of 155,000, and then from there price explodes, right? 35% increase from 155 to 238, and then hit the peak of the market. I want to say around just under 300,000, right? I would have to assume.
That would have been probably at the highest for maybe a newly serviced piece, and
Current market is roughly trading around 2021 again, 220 range.
I think at the most 220,
Around the 220 range. Okay, so again, another one about a 20% gainer. So this is, if you had to compare RM, 11 to, I don't know, a Rolex, would it be like a Rolex Daytona, for example, or would it be like, what would it be like? Just to give people a context, right? It's like the standard Rolex model.
I could see how you would say Daytona because it's a chronograph, but I would compare it more to
Submariner.
Maybe a Submariner.
Moving on, RM3501. Maybe a little bit of a shocker here. Why did you decide to pick this one?
Because we spoke about the basic RM10 entry level piece. Then we got into where Richard Mille really took off when they started using different type of materials, ceramics, carbons. The RM3501 was really kind of very similar to the RM55, where it was like, what the hell is this? Right. It was an all black carbon, extremely lightweight watch that Rafael Nadal wore, right, when he played it. He was really the guy that brought Richard Mille as an ambassador to the forefront like nobody else before. This is a guy who won Grand Slams wearing this watch. This is the guy that we saw break records wearing this watch.
Average market or average sale price, Richard Mille RM3501, 76,000 in 2016. Now, this was a watch prior to that. Would have been part of the closeouts, or are we talking it had always been?
3501s and 55s were never part of that.
So we're talking about
5s, 10s, 11s, some of the round models, 16s, which is the square model, which I didn't put in there, which actually would have been very interesting to see, because 16s they're up in value from the closeout days, but they didn't really reach any type of crazy numbers, but they're still up over time. But 35, basically nothing in ceramics or NTPT carbons were part of that.
Interesting. So again, going back to this idea, alternative materials are the precious metals of Richard Mille. So average sale price, 76,000. Huge spike in 2017, 23% increase, 100,000, breaks that 100,000 barrier. And then from there, it's just a constant increase. I mean, just an explosion in price, right? 135,000 average sale price, 25% increase. 160,000 in 2019, another 15% increase. Then it goes to 237 average sale price, 2020, 32% increase. Then breaks to 300,000. Right, another 30% increase, and then at the peak of the market, I mean, it would have probably been around a $400,000 watch. Average sale price for us so far this year was $364. Current market sitting around the 310 to 300 range.
I'd say no, it's a little bit more than that. It's around 350 today. I think it's very fair to point out that the RM3501 was a manual wind version. Then they released a 3502, which was the automatic. But you can't tell the difference between the two from far. Like if I'm sitting right here, 3501, 3502, most people can't tell. So I think it's important to point out that 3502, which was the automatic version, hit 500,000.
Right. So even more successful than the 35.
More successful.
Right. Which is, like
we just don't have enough data points back from 2016. But the fact of the matter is, it's essentially the same watch minus the automatic versus manual movement. Hit 500,000. Same looking watch.
So current market, we're sitting now around the 350,000 range. Average annual return, almost 22.5%.
That's also a big winner.
Big winner, right? Now again, I think the point I want to reiterate, right, because we've gone through basically a bunch of models from Patek, AP, Rolex, Richard Mille, your kind of 4 pillars, I would say the 4 best-selling on the secondary watch market, watch brands, right? The point of this analysis for me was not to showcase the investment potential of watches, right? To me, it was to show people, look, the doom and gloom people out there, the Morgan Stanleys who are taking watch charts information and saying, oh yeah, in Q3 of 2022, watch prices are down 10%, 20%, maybe 25%, whatever the case it may be. Yes, on any given moment, an asset is subject to price fluctuation.
Of course it is.
But I think this very clearly demonstrates watches as, at the very least, a store of value or a gainer over time is very inherent. It's a market analysis to showcase the idea of watches as really something that we've never seen before, right? Which is an alternative asset. Again, not an investment.
A
not
fun alternative asset that you can actually wear, enjoy, and be passionate about. I mean, this goes back to just our human psychology and our short-term memory. You know, I was watching CNBC and they were analyzing Warren Buffett's portfolio, his 5 biggest holdings, which were Apple, Chevron, Coca-Cola, and a few other ones, whatever it was. And they were breaking down his portfolio, his 5 biggest holdings. And the one analyst goes, you know, he's underperforming. He's holding Chevron, yet Exxon, you know, Chevron's only up 9% in the year, 10%, whatever it was, and ExxonMobil's up 85% in the year, so he's underperforming. And the other analyst turns to him and she goes, well, no, he's not. You're looking at it in 3 quarters of 2022. Yes, you're right in that analysis, but look back a year, look back 3 years, look back 5 years and 10 years. Chevron heavily outperformed ExxonMobil. But the reason I say this is because we are so quick to judge the current circumstance without really taking the time to understand what has happened over a longer period of time.
Right. We wanted to start at the 2016 basis because the watch market has changed completely since then, right?
Yep.
Back in the day, right, a watch was not a traded commodity. It just wasn't, right? Prices were very much stable, right? That's what it was. It was the nature of the beast. But today, what we see is very much the signs of a market, a true commoditized market.
Absolutely. And although prices have come down from the absolute highs, there is one thing I can say for sure, is that demand for the product has not gone anywhere.
Absolutely.
You know, so when you compare it to something like cryptocurrency, prices went up and prices went down. I can't really make an argument for or against the demand for crypto because we still don't know what it does, right? You can say Bitcoin is a store of value, but what can you really do with it? Not much besides hold it in a wallet and say you have it. Yep. With watches, there's still demand. You want to wear the piece, you want to flex. There's nothing better. You know, a watch, they say a picture what? Says 1,000 words? Yeah. Watches say way more than that.
Yeah.
You know, I can have a guy looking like a homeless guy coming in a certain watch and I can tell you his whole life story. Not his whole life story, but I can tell you a lot about that guy just by the watch he wears, so
I want to talk about, again, this is kind of to close off the video, trends, right? One thing that I've seen, at least personally, clients I've dealt with is the whole notion behind trades, right? Because the watch market exploded in price, people could buy, 5, 10, a mass collection of 20 plus watches, and they would be totally okay with that. Why? Because, I mean, listen, the day after tomorrow, it's going to be worth 5% more than what you paid for it, right? Nowadays, what I'm seeing is those guys who had 20, 25 watches trim down to maybe 6, 7, 8 watches, right? Very heavy hitting, really good watches that they really like. They're going to enjoy whether they take a bath on it or not. They don't care. They bought it because they like it.
Yeah, right? We still have a lot of trade volume that's happening. Yep. What we're seeing happen more and more now is if somebody bought a watch, call let's say 3501. Since it's fresh on the screen, at a very high number, and they're still in the market for a watch, they still have the appetite for something else, and they're just over that watch, they'll put it into something that's stable. Right? They'll trade out and trade into something else. So there's still a lot of trading volume going on, right? There just isn't as much people as sending a bank wire for the watch they want it today.
Yeah.
There's a little more hesitancy, but there's a lot more trades coming. Yeah. If I'm not wearing this watch and it's coming down in value, I don't mind trading it for something else that's coming down in value. It doesn't matter. It depends what the out-of-pocket difference is. It depends what you want to wear. There's so many different variables in our business.
Yeah. I look at this analysis, it actually gives me a lot of hope, right? The whole doom and gloom, the idea that the watch market is gone, it's sunk, it's finished, it's never going to be what it was before. I mean, we still look back at 2016 prices of 15,202 trading for $20,000.
Yes.
I almost cry thinking of that time, right? Will it ever hit that? I don't think so. Never, right? I don't ever see the watch market going back to a time like that.
People ask me all the time, where do I think the market's going to be? The only thing I can really say, the most honest thing I can say is I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball. It's the obvious answer. But will those prices reach those levels again? I truly don't believe so. And that's not for a lack of demand for the product. That's just, we're just not going to get that much stimulus.
Yeah.
Like, there's not going to be that much free money in the economy for that to happen again. But what this stimulus did do was it raised awareness for the watch market like never before. Yep. And people are now stuck and glued to it. And they have an appetite for this product, and they have an addiction.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Guys, on that note, we're going to end it. I want to thank Adrian again for your time. I think this has been a really fruitful analysis. I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as we had fun making it and talking about it, right? I think this really puts things into context more so than anything else, because, again, this is not conjecture. It's not speculation. It's not aggregations of watch listings. This is cold, hard sales data, right? Real-time facts that we have experienced at Luxury Bazaar. Adrian, thank you again.
Always a pleasure, Marco. Thank you guys for tuning in. We'll see you next time.
Take care.